Ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to make some pretty bold statements. Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk is literally about the evacuation of 400,000 men on the beaches of Dunkirk, and it's literally experiencing that evacuation. And to be honest, I don't think in my entire life I've ever experienced something like this movie, and certainly not in 70mm. You have to see this movie, and you have to see it on the biggest screen possible. This is, ladies and gentlemen, not only, in my opinion, Christopher Nolan's finest film as a filmmaker, but it honestly ranks as one of my favorite movies I've ever watched. I was absolutely blown away by this movie. Like, there's so many war movies out there, but Christopher Nolan has found a way to do something different and really make you experience the horror, confusion, and frustration of that day for so many Allied soldiers. This movie is visceral, haunting, and fully immersive like any blockbuster you've ever seen. It really blew me away. In all of Christopher Nolan's filmography, he has never felt this vulnerable and naked as a filmmaker. He really gets down to the heart of Dunkirk, and that is that this is a survival film. And this is more about the event of Dunkirk than it is about any particular person who happened to be there on the beach of Dunkirk, which definitely leads to one of the biggest, things about this movie that I think is going to divide audiences, and that is there's no main protagonist. When you leave the theater, you're not going to feel like you know the characters, like their personal lives, but I definitely feel like you're still going to be rooting for them and invested into them, regardless if you know whether or not they have a lady back at home and they enlisted it because they felt entitled and they had to go fight. I mean, there's one scene in this movie, I won't spoil it, but it's at night, they're on a boat, something happens, and I audibly screamed out of terror at the screen because I was so terrified. Cinematography is absolutely breathtaking. I mean, there's certain shots in this movie that just left me stunned in horror. And I thought the performances and the acting was incredible. No one feels like they're running for the gold and trying to get that Oscar. And while yes, you have big name actors like Tom Hardy and Mark Rylance and Kenneth Branagh and Cillian Murphy into this, they're also working with a slew of no-name actors. And everyone is brilliant in this movie. No one is overshadowing anyone. It's all about the experience and the event of Dunkirk and not trying to make anyone stick out. Dunkirk at times can almost be a silent film. There's so very little usage of dialogue, and really there doesn't need to be much dialogue because this is about the evacuation of Dunkirk. And I honestly think Christopher Nolan said it best, so I'm just going to read you what he said. The empathy for the characters has nothing to do with the story. I did not want to go through the dialogue, tell the story of my characters. The problem is not who they are or who they pretend to be or where they come from. The only question I was interested in was, will they get out? Was shocked at how Christopher Nolan viewed the enemy. I thought it was a bold choice and it works brilliantly. You never once see an actual German in this movie, which in my opinion makes the Germans feel like this sort of supernatural presence that's lingering around and that could literally attack at any second, and that the British and the French and everyone is completely helpless. Dunkirk is at Christopher Nolan at his finest. He's never felt so naked and vulnerable in all of his filmography. This is a sheer cinematic experience like no other and ranks as not only the best war film I've ever seen, but one of the greatest movies I've ever witnessed. As the score goes, I'm going to give Dunkirk a 5 out of 5. There you have you guys. There was my fanboy review of Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk. I absolutely love this movie. I cannot wait to go see it for a third time later this week. So let me know in the comment section below what you think of Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Where on the spectrum are you? And until next time, you guys, I'm the Slasher Movieer, and you guys have just been slashed.